Hello guys, welcome back. In this video we are going to develop a JSP Servlet JDBC MySQL create a read, update and delete example. So in this example we are going to develop a web application using JSP Servlet JDBC and MySQL database, and we perform create a read, update, delete operations with MySQL database. Alright, let's get started. So what we are going to build, so in this video tutorial we are going to build a simple user management web application that manages a collection of users. So we basically develop a simple basic features in our user management application, that is create user, update user, delete user, retrieve user and list of all the users. So these are the very simple basic features that we are going to implement in our user management web application. Alright, so look at here the screens. So this is the list of users page, and here basically all the users from the database tables are listed here, and you can see here add new user button. So we can use this button to add a new user to the list, and here are edit and delete buttons. So we can use the edit button to edit the particular user, and we can use a delete button to delete a particular user from the list. Okay, and this is the header, and here is the users link. So we can click on this link to list out all the users. So you are in a add new user page, then you once you click on users link, then this link will be navigate to the list of users page. Okay, so this is the add new user page. So we can use this page to add a new user to the user list. And again look at here the users link. So once we click on this link, it will navigate to the list of users page. So here is the edit user page, so we can also edit the user. So these are the CRUD operations that we are going to implement in this video tutorial. So add new user, edit user, delete user and list out the user. So these are the CRUD operations. Alright, so we are going to use a MVC Design Pattern to develop this web application. So I would like to give you a brief overview of MVC Design Pattern. So MVC stands for Model View Controller, and Model View Controller is a pattern used in software engineering to separate the application logic from the user interface. As the name implies, the Model View Controller pattern has three layers. So model layer defines the business layer of the application, and the controller layer manages the flow of the application, and the view layer defines the presentation layer of the application. So we are going to create these layers in our web applications. Alright, so that's why I am going to give an overview of MVC so that you will get an idea while developing the our MVC web application. So this is the high level architecture of MVC design pattern. So look at here the web browser, controller, model, view. So these are the components involved in model view controller design pattern. So once we hit the URL in a web browser, so based on the URL the corresponding controller will get invoked. Controllers consist of servlets, alright, and views consist of JSPs, and model consist of Java classes. So once the request comes to the controller or the servlet, so servlet will process that request, and it will add some validations if necessary, and then that data will be again forwarded to the model. So we can write any business logic in a model, and also controller will get the model data and it will forward to the JSP page, and JSP page will get that model data and that will render on a web browser. So this is a very simple flow. So it's important to understand the tools and technologies that we will be using. So let's have a look into the tools and technology that we will be using. So we use JSP and Eclipse IDE and JDK 1.8 or later. Next we use Apache Tomcat 8.5 to deploy our web application, and we use a servlet, and we use MySQL connector Java JDBC driver to connect to the MySQL database using JDBC API. So these are the tools and technology that we'll be using. Let's have a look into the development steps. So I really like this slide because it outlines what are the steps that we are going to implement in this video. So the very first is we create a Eclipse dynamic web project. So once we create the project, then we need to add all the required Java dependencies. Next we create a project structure. Next we set up the database, and next we create a Java bin class, that is a user, and next we create a User DAO class. So User DAO class has all the JDBC code, and next we create a User Servlet. So User Servlet will handle all the web requests, and next we create a user list JSP page, that is user-list.jsp page. Next we create a user form JSP page, that is user-form.jsp page, and next we also create a error JSP page, and finally we deploy and test our application, and we will see the demo. So these are the development steps that we are going to implement. So first step is create a Eclipse dynamic web project in Eclipse IDE. So let's open the Eclipse IDE and let us start developing this web application. So I highly suggest you guys to start coding with me, so that you will get a hands-on experience on coding. Alright, let's get started. So let's open the Eclipse IDE and let's start developing the web application. So I am in Eclipse IDE. So let's create a Eclipse dynamic web project. So go to the file, new, and choose dynamic web project, and let's give a project name as JSP Servlet JDBC MySQL CRUD example. Alright, so once you are happy with the project name, hit finish. So here we go. So we created our Eclipse dynamic web project. Alright, let us see the next step. So next step is we need to add the required Java dependencies. So just let me copy the Java dependencies that are required and let me paste in a lib folder. So here we go. So we are using JSP, Servlet, and JDBC and MySQL database. So these are the 4 Java dependencies are enough to develop this web application. So you can get these jar files from my GitHub repository. So I will be hosting source code of this tutorial on my GitHub repository, so that you can able to get the jar files from there. Alright, now let us see the next step. Next step is we need to create a project structure. So let's create a packaging structure or a project structure. So right click on src folder, new, choose package, and let's give a project name. Let's give a package name as net.javaguides.usermanagement.model. Next let's create a one more package, and let's name it as DAO, and let's go ahead and let's create one more package, and let me give name as a web. Alright, so under model package we keep all the models or Java bin classes. Under DAO package we keep all the DAO classes, and under web packages we keep all the controllers, that is the servlets. Alright, so this is the simple packaging structure for our web application. Now let us see the next step. So the next step is we need to set up the database. Alright, so we'll be using MySQL server. So I am going to use MySQL Workbench as a client for MySQL database server. Alright, so let me open MySQL Workbench here, and I will create a database and name it as a demo. So let's just write the statement create database demo. It will create a new database. Yeah, here we go. And I have a DDL script here. So we are going to create a users table. It has ID, name, email, country. These are the columns. And look at here, we are auto incrementing the primary key, that is the ID, and just select the database here, demo database, and execute this DDL script. And let me refresh. Yeah, here we go, users table is created. Great. Now let's have a look into the next step. So next step is we need to create a Java bin, that is user class. Alright, so again let us switch to the Eclipse IDE and let's create a user class. So right click on model package, new, and choose class and give name as user, and let's create a private fields, private int id, private string name, private string email, private string country. Alright, so these are the 4 fields we required. So to keep it simple, I am going to create only these fields, so you are free to use any fields for this user management web application. So let me create a getter setter methods to access these private fields. Alright, so let me also create a parameterized constructor. Right click, source, constructor using fields, select all. Alright, and let me create one more constructor without id. So we are simply auto incrementing the primary key, so let's create one more constructor without id field. Great, so now we have created user Java bin class. Now let's have a look into the next step. So next step is we need to create a user DAO class. So right click on DAO package, new, and choose class and give class name as user DAO. So this is the user DAO class. It has all the JDBC related stuff. So we will be creating a CRUD database operations inside this user DAO class. Alright, so DAO basically stands for data access object. It is a design pattern to separate all the database related stuff into a separate class. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's develop a CRUD database operations inside this class. So let me write the comments here so that it will be easy for you to understand. So this DAO class provides a CRUD database operations for users table in a database. Alright, so let's create variables to store JDBC URL, username and password. So here I have defined JDBC URL, JDBC username and password, and this is the MySQL JDBC link, and demo is the name of the database and username and password. Now let's create a static SQL statement to insert, delete, update and select users. So let me quickly write the code for creating the static SQL statements. So here we go. So this is the insert users SQL statement. Here we use this SQL statement to insert users into users table, and this is the select user by ID SQL statement. So here we are writing the SQL select statement to retrieve a user from the users table by ID, and this is the select all users SQL statement. So this will select all the users from the users table, and this is the delete users SQL statement. So this will delete all the users from the users table, and this is the update SQL statement. So this will update a particular user by ID. Okay, so here we can update a user with the name, email, country by using by ID. Alright, so these are the SQL statements that we need in our code. Alright, let's go ahead and let's define CRUD methods now for the user. So create user or insert user, next update user, select user by ID, next select users, delete user. So these are the database operations, and we are writing a separate method for each database operations. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's write a separate method for each database operations. So before that, let's create a get connection method, which will create a JDBC connection with a MySQL database. So let me quickly write the method here. So look at here, this is the get connection method. So here we basically pass the JDBC URL, username and password to the get connection method, and we get a connection object, and we will be using this get connection method in all the respective methods. Alright, so we are basically writing a separate common method, and we are reusing this method inside the remaining methods that I will show you a bit later. So let's create a insert user method, public void insert user, and just pass user object as a parameter. And here let's use a try with resource statement to automatically close the JDBC resources. Let's first get a connection, call the get connection method to get the connection object, and let's create a prepare statement object, and pass the insert SQL statement here. And what is the compilation error? Yeah, we need to throw the SQL exception. Alright, so look at the insert users SQL statement. Here are the placeholders, so we need to fill these placeholders by setting the values, right? So here we are using prepare statement, so we can use prepare statement dot set string and 1, and here just pass the name, and it's prepare statement dot set string and just pass 2, and just get the email address, prepare statement dot set string, pass 3, and finally we need to pass the country. So country spelling is mistake here, so what we'll do, we'll rename the country variable. Okay, let's execute this statement. Let's call the execute update statement here in order to execute this prepare statement. Execute update. Alright, and let's write a catch block and just print the exception here. That's it. So what we have done, we have created an insert user method which will insert a user into a users table. So let's similarly create a update user. So let me quickly create an update user method. So here you can see update user method. It has a user object as a parameter, and again we are performing the same steps, like we are getting the connection object, we are creating prepare statement, and we are passing update SQL statement here, and we are just providing the values for these placeholders, and we are executing this execute update method, and if the records are greater than 0, then we return this updated account. So this is very similar to insert user method. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's write the method to get a user by ID. So let me quickly write this method and let me explain you. So here is the select user method. So this will select a user by ID. Alright, and look at here, we are following the same steps. So we first establish a connection, and then we create a prepare statement, and here we are passing this select user by ID statement, and we are providing a placeholder for ID, and we are executing this prepare statement. So in case of insert and update, we are using execute update method, but here we are using execute query method because we want a result set, right? So that's why we need to call this execute query method. It will return a result set. So look at here, and once we got the result set, then we can extract the values or rows from this result set, and let's just iterate a result set in a while loop, and we can get a column values here, and we create a user object and we pass name, email, country to the user object, and then we return this user object. Pretty simple, right? Great. Now let's write a method for select all users. So let me just copy this code here, so which is almost similar. Let me zoom it. So let me rename this method select all users. No need to pass any ID. So let's create a array list users equal to new array list, and we add users to the array list here. And finally we return users and provide a list of user as a return type. Now we need to get a ID column value here. Get int, just pass ID. Great. Now we have developed select all users method, which will return a list of users from users table. Now it's time to create a delete user method, right? So let me quickly write the delete user method and let me explain you. So here is the delete user method, and we need to pass the ID, and again we are performing the same steps. We first get a connection object, and then we create a prepare statement object, and we pass the SQL statement here, that is the delete users SQL statement, and we set the values for placeholder, and we are calling execute update method, and this will return a number of rows deleted. It's pretty simple, and it's almost similar to insert and update users method. So this completes our user DAO implementation. So what we have done, we have created insert user, update user, select user by ID, select all users, and delete users. So these are the database CRUD operations for users table. Great. So let's have a look into the next step. So next step is we create a user servlet, and we define all the CRUD methods which will handle a web request, that is create user, update user, delete user, and select all user. Alright, let us see how to implement it. So right click on web package, new, and create a servlet, and let's name it as a user servlet. And notice here we are using @web servlet annotation. So this is the default URL pattern for this servlet. So I will remove this because I want to handle all the requests in a single servlet. So I will explain you a bit later. Next, let me remove this all the unwanted code. Okay, now we'll be calling user DAO methods. So let's create a object of the user DAO class here, private user DAO and let's create this object inside a constructor. Great. Now what we'll do, we'll handle all the requests in a single method, that is in a doGet method. Okay, let me define this method above, and what I will do, I will call this doGet method, and let's handle all the requests in a doGet method itself. Okay. So there are different kind of actions like create new user or update user or edit user, delete user, list user. So let me quickly create a switch statement for these actions. So here I have created a switch case statement with a skeleton to handle all the requests such as /new, insert, delete, edit, update. So these are the requests we are going to handle, and we will write a separate method to handle these requests. And we get an action from the request object by using get servlet path. Alright, let's go ahead and let's first handle a new request. So let me quickly create a private method here with show new form, and inside and show new form method we are just creating a request dispatcher object, and we are forwarding request to the user-form.jsp page. It's very simple. So whenever we call this URL, it will forward request to the user-form.jsp page, and we can call this method from this case, and here we need to pass the request and response objects. So now we have handled new web request. Now it's time to write a code to handle insert web request. So I will quickly write the code to handle this insert web request, and I will explain you. Okay, so here is the insert user method, private method, and we are just extracting the user details such as user name, email, country from the request object, and we are creating a user object here, and we are passing a name, email, country to the constructor, and we are calling insert user method of user DAO object, and we just call this insert user method to save this user to the database, and then we redirect to the list request here. If the list is not there, then we write in a default section here. So I will show you that a bit later. So this is the method to handle insert user request. So it's pretty simple. So just we need to retrieve all the user form details from the request object, and we create a user object and we pass that user object to the insert user method to save this user object into a database. Pretty simple. So next is we need to write a code to handle the delete request. So let me quickly write the code and let me explain you. So here is the delete user method, which we just need to get the ID from the request object, and we call the corresponding delete user method in order to delete this user from the database. Pretty simple. So once the user is deleted from the users table, then we redirect to the users list page. So this is how we can handle a delete request, and just pass here the request object and response, and just surround it by try with resource try and catch block. Now let's handle the edit web request. So in case of edit, just we need to return, or we need to just dispatch a request to the user from JSP page. So let me quickly write the code and let me explain you. So here is the show edit form. So first we get a user object by using select user method, and then we pass this user object to the request object using set attribute, and we forward this user object to the user-form.jsp page. So we pass this user object for editing on this page. So from this page we can edit the user, and we can submit the user, and that will be again updated in a users table. So it's pretty simple, right? So look at here, we get the ID from the request object, and we got a user object by ID, and we create a request dispatcher object, and we forward that user object to the user-form.jsp page. It's very simple. Let me call this method from /edit action, and here we need to pass the request and response objects. Let me enclose in a try and catch block. Now let's implement update. So let me quickly write the code and let me explain you. So here is the update user. So in case of update, we are doing the same thing, like we are retrieving all the user details from the request object using get parameter method, and we are again creating a user object, and just we are using, or we are calling update user method, and we are passing this user object to the update user method, and this update user method will update the user details to the users table, and then we redirect to the list page. It's pretty simple. And let me call this method from the action here inside a switch case statement. The request response. Now let's implement a default. So if the actions are not present in a switch case, then it will go to the default statement. So in a default section, we basically forward request to the users list page. So here is the list user method. So basically we fetch all the users from the users table, and then we set this list of users to the list user key using set attribute method of request object, and we just forward this request to the user list.jsp page. Alright, it's pretty simple list user method, and just we call from the default section a request a response. Great. Now we have developed all the logic to handle a web request in a single servlet. Now let's have a look into the next step. So the next step is we need to create JSP pages, that is user list.jsp page and user form.jsp page and the error page. So let's go ahead and let's create these JSP pages quickly. So notice here inside a servlet we have passed here JSP page names, but we have not yet JSP pages are created. So let's go ahead and let's create these JSP pages. So right click on web content folder, new, and select JSP file and give a name as user-form.jsp, and let's go ahead and let's create one more JSP page and name it as user list.jsp page, and let's create a error.jsp page now. Error.jsp, and let me replace this error.jsp page code with the exception.get message. So if there are any exceptions occur, then that exception will be shown on this page, and this exception object is an implicit object in a JSP. So we need to give this error page configuration in web.xml. Let me show you how to do that. So let me open the web.xml file. So basically, while creating this Eclipse dynamic web project, we need to choose the option for web.xml, but in our case we haven't chosen the web.xml option. So don't worry, just create a web.xml file inside a web.inf folder like this, and inside a web.xml we need to configure the error page like this. Okay, so any exceptions occur in our application, then that will be the exception will be populated on this JSP page. Simple, right? So let's design a user form.jsp page now. So let me quickly write the code and let me explain you. So here is the code. So I don't want to take much of the time, so I have just written the code here, and let me explain you. So anyways, I am going to host the source code of this tutorial on my GitHub repository, so you can able to get the code from there. So look at here, we are using Bootstrap CSS framework, and the version for Bootstrap is 4.3.1, and here we are using CDN link, and this is the header. So inside a header we are just providing a link, users link. So whenever we click on users, then it will call the list, and this list will be handled in a servlet. And this is the user form, and this user form will be will provide two functionalities, one for insert and another for update. So if the user object is null, then the form acts as a insert user form, and if user object is not null, then we can use this form for update. So based on the condition, we are just showing the text here. So if the user object is not null, then we show edit user text. If the user equal to null, then we show the add new user text. And this is a very simple form fields like for a username, user email, user country. And here we are using Bootstrap CSS classes like form control and form group, etc. Great. So here we can enter username, user email, user country, and we submit the form. Then this request will be sent to the servlet. Based on the action, this request will be handled in a servlet. For example, in a user servlet, if the action is update, then this here update user request will be handled here. And if the action is insert, then this will be handled here. Alright, so this is pretty simple flow. So let's design a user list .jsp page quickly. So here is the JSP code for user list.jsp page. So look at here, the same logic we have written. We have included bootstrap min.css file here. We have provided cnd link. So you can also download bootstrap CSS files from the official bootstrap website locally, and you can keep the bootstrap CSS files in a project, and you can give a path. Okay, so to quickly demonstrate this web application, I am just using CDN links here, and this is the header. So inside header we can use bootstrap bootstrap CSS classes in order to design the header, and we can provide a links like here. So this is the user link. So once we click on users link, it will navigate to the users list page, and this is the table. So this is the bootstrap table. So we are applying the CSS classes to this table here, and inside table we have columns ID, name, email, country, and actions, and here are the rows our value for the columns. For example, here is the list user, and we are iterating over a list user, and we are showing the users here. And look at here, this is the action. So edit and delete, and we are passing values to the ID like this. Okay, and we are using JSTL for each tag here in order to iterate over list of users. So this list user we got from the servlet. So at a servlet, so look at here, so we fetch all the users from the relational database table, and then we keep these users in a list user key in a request object, and then we get these values from the request object in a JSP. Okay, so we can use this JSTL syntax to get a list of users, and we can iterate, and we can show the list of users like this. It's pretty simple user list JSP page. Now let us see how to deploy this application, and let us see the demo. So in order to deploy this application, so first you need to configure Apache Tomcat server in Eclipse IDE, and just right click on the project, run as run on server, and hit finish. So let's wait for a moment. It will take a couple of seconds to deploy. Perfect, now our application is up and running. Let me just copy this link, and let's open a browser, and in a new tab just hit this link. Yeah, here we go. Look at here the screen, and click on add new user, and just enter the form here. Username as Ramesh Fortare, email ramesh24 @gmail.com and select country India and save. So here we go. So let me add one more user, Tony Stark, Tony @gmail.com US. So second record is added. Let me add one more record, demo. I add John and email ID is john@gmail.com, my country as US and save it. Yeah, so we have added 3 users to the users list. Now let's go ahead and let's see how to edit. So just click on edit button here and let me edit this user. So I give just name as a Ramesh and I update the email ID and I will just give ramesh@gmail.com and I save it. Yeah, here we go. So this Ramesh user is updated successfully, and let's go ahead and delete this user. Yeah, and let me delete this one also. So this is how we can add the new user, we can edit the user, we can delete the user, and we can list out the users. Alright, so I hope you got some idea how to develop a web application using JSP Servlet JDBC and MySQL database. So let us see the next step. So blog post and source code on GitHub. So I have already written a write-up tutorial on this topic, and you can find the blog post on my website, and also I have hosted the source code of this tutorial on my GitHub repository. So I'll be providing a link for blog post as well as the source code on GitHub repo, so that anytime you can check it out. I hope you found this tutorial useful, and subscribe to our channel. Whenever I will publish a new videos, you will get updated. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.